Welcome to the CEO Stylist podcast, where two unlikely CEOs come together and rewrite the narrative of what it means to be a CEO stylist. Yovanka, Loria and Kirsten Harris are on a mission, giving stylists permission to join the movement of artists breaking the mould of what is meant to be for the hair industry and creating the life and schedule of their dreams. Fast forward through many failed attempts and lessons learned in the process, it's time to level up the playing field. It's time to call BS on what's been done before. Yovanka and Kirsten are ready to share it all, defying the odds of the industry and teaching you how to do the same.
Hello, welcome to the CEO Stylist podcast. I'm your host, Yovanka Loria, and my beautiful co-host, Kirsten Harris. How are you today?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. We're back at it. I think from our last podcast, we were sitting in this very same position and I was having a little bit of a meltdown. Unbeknownst to me at that time, I had a little bit of a COVID episode. So we had a meltdown and it's taken us so long to come back, but we're here and we're ready for another amazing topic that we want to share.
So what are we going to talk about today, Yo?
So we're going to talk about planning in uncertain times. I think it's
that is a hot topic.
It's a hot topic of the month. I know, every other day I'm getting messages from our community, from stylists, from just all business owners. I think there's a cast of a shadow of, everyone's feeling it. I think a little bit. Everyone's a little bit quiet at the moment.
It's definitely happening out there. I think there's a little bit of panic that's set in. We open the news and that these newsworthy stories of the day, our interest rates are going up and there's less money to spend out. And also to that, wages are going up. So we've had salary reviews. They're talking about the economy crash. So all these big shock factor stories do create some uncertainty about, where we're headed.
Of course. And I know myself, just in the last couple of weeks, I've been going into the city on a Saturday and even looking at other businesses, this nail shop that I used to go to that you couldn't even get in. You had to book to get into this particular one. And it was so sad. Like 2 weeks ago, I went in there and there was no one in there.
Wow.
And they had two people working on me in the 2 hours that I was there, and even their panic. And, the first time that he was even saying, I've thought about selling my business. I thought about, panic is just setting in. But I really want to take this and not turn it into a negative thing. I think if we really rise above what's happening, and I think, coming from someone who, when COVID first hit, we really speak about how at that time I really did think that COVID was going to really affect my business, but the opposite happened. I think we noticed an increased focus in self-care. And I really do believe in our industry. I think that we're one of the lucky ones in service industry that, people might skim on different things. But I think when it comes to self-care, even though we've been a little bit quiet, but it's still sustained, we're still thriving compared to, what I thought would happen. So I think we just really want to make people aware that what do you do in those times?
Yeah. I want to can I just start with the comment that you made, and I hear this a lot and I've heard it a lot and I'm sure you have, about when your back's against the wall, the first thing that people think about doing is selling their business. Well, you're going to sell your business. Why? Because it's not because it's a thriving business and you're doing amazingly well and making a lot of money and now the time is to sell. It's things are really stressful. It's bleeding cash. And the answer is to sell. And I always, I've had this conversation with a client just this week. And I said, what makes you think that you can sell your business? Do you actually, and it's not to be offensive, but it's dig deep.
How is that the solution?
You could make the decision today that you're going to sell your business. And I firmly believe we all are in business. One day it's a legacy to either leave on to someone else, or you put it in a position where you can sell it. We're not here for a charity or anything like that. So, but it's when is the right time to sell the business? In our industry, probably not now is the time to sell a business, and certainly not when you're not making money.
Of course.
So I kind of tick that one off to go, you got to dig deep. In times like this, it's really about looking at so many different factors and reining it in and focusing on what's important.
And doubling down on, I know for me, whenever we've been, and we've, to be really honest, this is probably the first time we've been a little bit quiet. And when COVID first hit Adelaide, we were a little bit quiet. And, I always get this question, what do you do in those times? And I think for me, I've always just doubled down on our skill, and I always, to me, busy breeds busy. So I will figure out ways how to keep busy, whether it's retraining my staff, retraining myself. I don't look at the short-term loss. I keep looking at the long-term gain. And, it only is for a short period of time before things pick up, because guess what? People need their hair done.
Absolutely.
People need to get out there. People aren't going to be stuck at home for too long because they're going to figure out. And I think in our case, because it's a luxury service, there was always that, connotation of, oh my God, are people going to be able to afford these? But we've had to adapt. And I think the bottom line of our messaging is, if you're open to adapting in times, I think that's the key. And to me, it's also, what was I saying before about, value over volume? I think I just kept looking at how can I keep creating the value? How can I keep showing up with the experience? Because that's what people, they will be drawn to that. They will make time for that. They will, that self-care and that self-love really does come into, I think, what we do. And I think the ones that are going to learn to adapt and not be stuck in fear or scarcity mindset, I think that really is a big message that we want to share today.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, I don't know if you've been watching the news closely this week, it's always this time of year they talk about budgets. They're talking about, obviously, this pending recession that we're supposed to have. Whether or not we've hit it or not, I don't know. I don't think, when we talk recession, I think we think about what happened so many years ago.
That's right, 2008.
Yeah, the recession.
That was different.
It's so different. And a recession's quite common when you come out of something like COVID. And I don't want to focus on the COVID thing, but, I was talking to my daughter about it this week because she's studying economics in year 11. And she said, what's all this about? And I said, well, they're really pushing for the minimum wage to increase. And they were interviewing a series of people this week. I don't know if you saw it. I can't even remember. It might have been on Current Affair. Anyway, and the typical response from a business owner was, we can't afford the wage increase. And my opinion's quite different. I'm like, you have to afford it, because if we don't set that minimum wage increase up, there's not going to be money to put back in the economy. But so I always look at it and go, that's a really small-minded way. Yes, it's tough. It's tough no matter what on small business, but we need to accept and I guess surrender to the fact that minimum wages do need to go up. Otherwise, people aren't going to afford everyday things. We need them to be able to afford that. We need them to be able to spend back in the economy. So all small business gets a little piece of that pie. So there's this real shit fight on at the moment about, I don't even know who's behind it now, but, they're really trying to drive, I think it's like a 7% increase. So it's not massive, but by standard, it's a much bigger jump than where we've been in previous years. And so, of course, we're going to find out about that by the end of June, because from the 1st of July, that's where we're at.
And they're pushing for it as well.
I think it'll go through. Yeah.
And super's gone up. Like when you look at the back end of businesses, I think, I really feel for small businesses. I think we've been, and particularly in our business, I think what people don't realize out there, most businesses, if you have casual employees or, you have part-timers, you can cut their hours. But what happens with, hairdressers that have full-time staff and they're contracted for full-time, or apprentices, with what happens with apprentices, if you don't have the hours there, you can't cut their hours.
No, not at all.
You have to legally pay them for 38 hours.
Correct. So whether or not they're there or not.
So whether they're there or not. I know in America it's a very different system where, they have freelance hairdressers. So if there's no work, you don't have to pay wages. But how do you make sense for businesses that, have a full staff, like 18 staff, 15 staff, and they get hit with, quiet periods?
Yeah, it's
and
scary.
what happens, how do you justify higher wage when there's no, maybe for that week or for the next month or for the next 3 months, when there's no clients come in, how do you justify that increase in wage?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've written some notes because I knew that you were going to ask me this question. So here's my little insights into, and this seems all very superficial, and I can't imagine how I'd feel as a business owner with 18 staff and you have a significant drop in business. I think that would be quite scary. So some of this may or may not relate to that size salon business, but I think all facts are relative. And the biggest priority when your back's against the wall is you need to stay close to your customers, because without your existing client base coming in, you don't have an income. So if that is the thing that is a significant issue in
then
terms of
where do you readjust the focus?
Yes, focus on because clients come first, no matter what.
That's right. Don't stay in that fear mode, because you actually shut down.
Yeah.
And then you block that abundance energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that reconnection. It's so important. You're so right.
And there's so many ways, and I don't want to get into that now, but there are so many ways in which we can reconnect with our customers. But that is the most important thing, because you need to know where you stand. Because if you have like a 25% drop and they're not coming back, then I guess leads to, is there a service issue? Is there a quality issue? Is there
a readjustment of what you're, I know
is
for
it wrong
us,
location?
I just touch on one thing that we've done different? You know, before we were known for that big makeovers, the 2 rows, the 3 rows. So we've completely adjusted to clients. We've had that open communication, sending out newsletters. And if you're experiencing anything, you know, financially, let us know, and we're willing to work with you within your budget.
Right. And are you finding that a lot now?
A lot. So we've been able to take, you know, clients who are having 2 rows to maybe 1 row.
Yeah. And what's the value proposition difference?
I'll give you an example. So for a new install, you know, you're talking anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to 1 row, you know, being $800 to maybe $1,000 to $1,200.
Interesting.
So depending on how much hair they have, because ours is so custom, it is a little bit different. But in saying that, don't forget they're wearing this hair for a year.
Yes.
You know, so once you break it down and you can explain that, and, you know, our clients now know the value of our product, that it does outlast. So they're happy to pay that. But we've been able to readjust the focus and offer them an alternative. That, you know, we had so many that were like, I think I need to take these out. I won't be able to afford it. So finding that solution and being open to, you know, adapting has been such a game changer for us.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So does that then mean you've got capacity to take on more clients because you're doing less, or?
That's always our capacity, because we have a different market for it.
Yes.
But I think now also, you know, the power of marketing, which is what we also talk about. And now that we're marketing, you know, for the fine hair client and the 1 row, that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
Because that's what we did. We doubled down on that and we just readjusted that. And once you put that energy out there, you know, it's so powerful. What you reap is what you sow, right?
Interesting.
So that's what we're getting. But on a larger, you know, aspect, like I said, the last couple of weeks have probably been our quietest. But
ever
in the, you know, the course of, you know, having, you know, our salon for the last 4 or 5 years.
And where are we at? Just so, because for future listeners, we're talking like the last 2 weeks of May.
Last 2, which we're putting it down to, I think also, you know, looking back in hindsight, I think May is always, there's a couple of periods always like before, you know, before the end of the year, before the, you know, the calm before the storm.
Yes.
But I do believe also, you know, people are, and this is just feedback, like you say, we reconnect with our clients and we're asking them if they're okay, where they're at. And a lot of them are saying they're holding off until end of financial year.
Of course.
So I think there's a little bit of that. And also, you know, if you've noticed, I personally don't really invest a lot of my energy listening to the news and the media. I try to stay away because I need to keep my mind, you know, focused and clear. But just I know from also clients cancelling, because there's a little bit of sickness going around. Personally, look at me, I was out for a month.
Yeah.
You know, last time, and people are getting sick. But my biggest, you know, pressing question is what I was asking before. When you have, like myself, we have 14 staff, but some are permanent part-time, some are part-time. I can cut some hours down, but there's about 6 on my books that I'm legally required because I've employed them for full-time. You know, and apprentices, what I was saying, what happens there? What happens, you know, in contracts is, you know,
we've got a commitment.
We've got a commitment, but in contracts there's that stand down thing, you know, due to pandemics, and there's little loopholes that we were able to navigate through last time.
That's it.
But what happens, that's my question with your notes. Hopefully you can shed some light.
Well, I don't think I can answer that specific question when you have, you know, a heavy set staff lineup and you've got that
commitment.
You've got a big commitment to wages. It's really about, I think, coming back to what you were saying before about retraining your staff. There's always something to do in a salon for everyone. There is always. So whether that's not, you know, it's retraining on each other, doing hair, doing makeup, whatever it is. It's content. It's engaging with their own audience on their own social media channels. Most of the kids these days have their own social media channels, like a hair page or a professional page that they're using. So it's to re-engage with their own clients. I think that that's really important. Staff meetings, like, readdressing systems and processes, all the things that we can't, like leading into Christmas, you don't have the time to do. So this is a good time. It's making use of the time you have because
when you come back, you're going to be armed with new skill set.
That's it. Yeah.
And, having that retraining, once you get busy again, I think that's what we did the first time COVID. Remember, I think it was at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
Was it where we experienced that little bit of...
Yeah, a little bit of quiet.
A little bit of quiet. And that's exactly what we did. So by the time clients came back, but I also think this goes back specifically to business owners. And I think this is what we spoke about a few times, is building that war chest.
Yeah. Well, that's one of my things. Plan for when things go wrong.
Plan for things go wrong. And I think, thank God my husband and I came together in business because, I am that creative. I definitely am that innovator and that, bigger picture person, whereas, the accounts isn't, numbers isn't my thing, but he's in the background. He's in the background and he's been really instrumental. I think that's where you also come in. Yeah. You're not an accountant.
No.
But you really, and I've seen you with your business, what you've been doing, you really connect the right people to that business so that, as business owners, building that war chest, like now, thank God I'm not in this position when I was in my 20s because I really would have fucked it up. Do you know what I mean? And that comes back into knowing, financials, knowing tax, knowing how it works, like building that war chest so that when you, experience, we've been able to navigate. And I think because you're saying tactful scenarios of what to do, like we can all do skills and learning. But what happens when you don't have the income coming in?
Have the money.
As a business owner,
absolutely.
You're not going to be so gracious and be like, you're going to be so stressed out of your mind.
Yeah.
You're not really thinking, and that breeds bad energy onto. So it really is, I really do feel for business owners. Lucky we're not in that position, but I really do know. I've spoken to, multiple.
It's
I feel
really
like it's
stressful.
It's so stressful. I feel like it's also my part-time job is talking hairdressers, off a ledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, some of the bigger levers, like one of the things that, I'll tell you what I've written down here. I've written down people, process, purpose, profit, performance, productivity. They are the key levers that business owner can pull in their own business. So when we're talking about profit, it's removing the non-profitable activities from your business. Now, these are small levers. So when your back's against the wall and you've got that wage bill, and typically a salon scenario is they're paying their wages every week. But there are some other key factors, like there are some other costs that they're not paying every week. They're paying monthly. So for example, rent. And I'm not subscribing that you don't pay your landlord for a second because we need to secure our premises. But if you find a reasonable landlord, you might be able to enter into short-term.
Is that such a thing?
Well, there's plenty out there because at the end of the day, they don't want to go through the process either of eviction
But then, and this is coming from someone with experience with yourself. I've had
the worst experience with this, so I can directly make a statement about what it feels like to have your back against the wall, come up with a $20,000 rent bill to pay and not having the money to cover the wages. Like I've been in that position with a salon interstate. It was awful situation.
On top of all the other stresses.
So, I looked at that and went, it's just something's got to give. My staff are more important than actually the premises at the moment. The landlord, it was a big landlord in my case. They needed to come to the party to try and negotiate a position. But that aside, like the bigger issue I found is cash flow issues typically come when the business is not making money. Because if you're in a profitable position, you do have a war chest by default, right?
That's right.
Like if you're profiting, you've got money in the bank that you can cover some short term, because it's not like fundamentally, if you've got a business that you've got no clients coming in the door, then you've got a serious problem. You've got to close the gap and you've probably got to put some staff off. There's no question about that. Like if you've gone from hero to zero, like the reverse, then you've got a significant issue. But if it's short term because we've got a couple of weeks that are quiet and there's a few more gaps, people are spending less, then the bigger issue is pricing and those non-profitable activities that you've probably got to remove. Now, this week alone, I had a conversation with a new client that I've taken on board, and they're in a position where they're not making money. And then when we unpacked, they wanted to sell the business. And I said, up front, you don't have a business to sell. You've actually got a really good business, but it could take you months for someone's got to see opportunity beyond its numbers.
That's right.
On
That's
a spreadsheet.
So powerful.
But when we looked at it, the significant issue was they're paying too much money, like for their rent, for example. Now, they took a business over, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I think, I'm in this position where I've had lots of experience with leasing that I can, they're younger, they've not done it. And I'm like, yep, I've been there. I can
never been
completely
that's right.
empathize. And it's the aftermath that you go, shit, like I'm paying all this money. They're the kind of gaps. So I said, and they're experiencing the same thing. It's quiet.
Is this something where you're encouraging people to have that conversation?
Have that conversation
with the landlord?
Absolutely.
And see what compromise you can come to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because no one wants to have an empty tenancy.
That's right. It is a lot harder for them to find,
yes,
the next, especially with what's going on. So work with me. Let's work
especially in
together.
our industry because of this new, now we're going to deviate. I've heard the terminology, the indie hairdresser that exists out there. And that's no offense to sole operators that are working independently. That's what it is. It's, term indie hairdresser. But that's where it'll go to. And we can't afford to have, as an industry, everyone working from home, these home salons, or working in a solo operator, because how then do our kids learn that new wave of apprentice? How do they learn?
And do you know what was so funny? Because I think everyone listening to this podcast will know my story where I started from a home salon. And I remember I used to cop so much flack from it because here's my honest opinion about home salons. I don't actually have an issue with them.
No.
What I have an issue with is when they're undervaluing.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, oh, I'm from home. They're not treating it like a business.
Yes.
They're still not realizing their numbers.
Yeah.
They're not realizing what they're doing. And inadvertently, it's actually hurting our industry.
It is.
Because once you figure out for the amount of clients that you have, for the amount of hours that you're working, what you're actually making, you're not actually making anything unless you understand your numbers. Because at home, what business skills, I know when I first started, and I speak about this openly, it was myself and Ash working, and, we're pulling in 6,000-7,000 at that time. And I remember high-fiving my husband going, oh, we're doing amazing. And he's like, shut up, you idiot. Like once 7,000 was a lot coming from someone who didn't have any experience in it, thinking that was making money.
But it was pretty good. Like if you think about the landscape of salons, that would be, to some salons,
it would still be okay.
Income would be pretty good.
But not on the scope of, and you would know this, as an independent artist, I'm not getting the benefits through these companies, and I don't have the buying power to purchase the products that someone who has a bigger salon, and you would know because that was part of your negotiating. Once you have a bigger salon, you get better price for things. So it does come back. You think you are making, but you're really not. So I think if people do want to have, something from home, I honestly encourage you to really rethink your numbers and get in touch with a really good accountant or a business coach even.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can help, because you can really set yourself up, and I think that's why our industry now, I feel like COVID a couple of years ago, we started to really reclaim our power back.
Yes.
And really be taken from what we were always known as being undervalued. I feel like within COVID, we've really shifted that. And I think also with our product, because it's such a high-end product, and that's part of what we teach now. There's no point in having an amazing skill set if you have the zero mindset.
That's it. We're definitely getting there.
We're getting better.
You're talking about pricing, but it's still a hot topic of mine that I don't think, like, business costs have risen significantly in the last 2 or 3 years. I don't believe we've caught up from what our offer is as an industry. There's still a big gap.
And would you agree, clients don't care about your expenses? They don't care. They don't want to know about, like, and
everyone's got expenses.
I remember there was a few things on social media where people saying, well, this cost me this much. They don't really care about that. I think this leads back to us creating value, reconnecting with that client, because that's what's really going to be able to attain what we charge and how we're going to be able to set that pricing and how we're going to retain those clients.
That's it.
And that business.
Yeah.
I think that really is in a nutshell.
And I have this is a little bit superficial what I'm about to say, but I know when times were tough for me, I always turned it into my mindset to be grateful that you've got bills to pay, which means you're in business and you're alive. You've got something that you can turn, recreate. You're in control. Don't let this control you. So I always said that. Even, tax is another thing, right? If you're paying tax, then there must be something
that you're doing right. That's right. And everyone, I hear it all the time. I have to pay tax. And
be grateful.
Be grateful. That's right. It's a good perception. It's a good way to perceive things.
It's not a fun bill to pay, right? It's not, wow, you're doing all this work. Money comes in. I always go, it's like the tide. Money comes in and it goes out. But be grateful. Be grateful that you've got those bills. I know that sounds like a bit of bullshit.
No, I agree with that. It's so true. It really, really is.
But yeah, so that's, I don't know whether I kind of feel like I've deviated away from your actual question, like how do you cut your wage bill? Like how do you cut costs in times that are tough? And I guess the issue is you can't, unless you need to put staff off, and then you still need to go through that process, right? Because we have employment laws in place that protect our people. So I hope that our listeners never are in that position that they have to make that drastic move. And this is just like a small dip in the ocean. And then as an industry,
the tide will turn.
I genuinely believe we will, because we haven't ever got to a point where people aren't showing up to have their hair done. So we're not going to get to that point, but it's just like, how much of the market share are you going to own?
Do you think in normal hairdressing, because when I say normal, what we do is so custom, it's not normal. People couldn't sit at home and sew, a set of extensions in. Do you think with hair color, people are doing their own hair at home, like just with a standard, regrowth touch up? Remember there was that big thing with
less
COVID?
of it. Oh yeah, they definitely had a red hot go. We were forced to, right? You think about Melbourne as an example, they were pretty much in lockdown for a year when you think about it. So, and we were a non-essential service. Is that right? I forget. People were forced to have a red hot go at home. Thankfully, we are very driven by trends in our industry. Right now, blondes seem to be making a comeback.
And dimensional colour as well.
And dimensional colour. That is very hard to achieve at home. Yes, there's those kits available at Priceline and, there's those hair co-ops that will sell to everyday people. But I'd like to think that most wouldn't give this a go unless they're a non-practicing hairdresser. Of course, knock yourself out. But for the whole, because we're so governed by trends, I'd like to say minority will do it. I tell you what, I've seen a bigger trend in, I guess, our age range. Like I'm 1 year off 50, well, less than a year now. And we're always defeating the odds of going grey. I definitely have seen more trend of women entering into their 50s that will surrender to the greyness and work with that. I've definitely seen more of a
you have seen that? I haven't seen that anywhere.
Yes, I have.
I feel like they are, but they're going lighter.
They're lighter. They're surrendering to the grey, and making a trend out of it. I've seen that a lot. And I don't know whether it's because I had a birthday in April. I went, holy shit, this is my last year of my 40s.
Oh, you have to show me. I haven't seen any of that.
So, and it's kind of like cool. I don't think I'm brave enough to colour my own hair at home. So no,
it's
I
true.
don't.
So take that. We are not non-essential. We are very essential.
Very essential. And will we be replaced by robots? We've had this conversation before.
AI.
Look, who knows?
It's a whole nother podcast.
So what else? Refocus on, we talked about removing the non-profitable activities, and jokes aside, that is not even in this time. I think that this is essential for any business owner at least once a year to check in with their business and really review the direction that they're going in and removing those. We've all had them, the non-profit, the low-performing activities. So
really nurture that clientele, find out, get in touch with them, see how they are, what they're doing, what you can do.
That's it. So, and it comes down to, what's your hourly rate? And there's a business for everything. So, for example, kids' carts. So if it's going to take someone 30 minutes to cut a child's hair, and I know this could be a bit of a scandal, what I'm about to say, if your hourly rate that you want to earn is $150 an hour, could you fairly charge a children's haircut at $75? Probably not. So that would be outrageous. So it's making those hardline decisions to go, where is the best use of my time?
That's right. And dropping the services.
And dropping those services.
That aren't serving you and readjusting that focus. And that really does come down to, we'll wrap it up. But the biggest takeaway, like I said, just really look within and look at what you want to do, what type of work you want to attract, and double down. Get some models, do each other's hair.
Yeah.
Just as long as you're doing something, like I say, the biggest takeaway for me is busy breeds busy.
Yes.
And that I've utilized that in my business multiple times when we've had a few little quiet periods. And with that, someone else out there sitting at home and thinking or watching what you're doing on social media, because that really is our first touch of contact with our consumers.
Yeah, it's really
and
good
you will
point.
Eventually the tide will turn and someone will be intrigued by what you're doing, your messaging, what you're offering. And it has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. And I think that will always come out in the end if we're willing to ride that wave.
That's a good Mine is focus on that business strategy. What's the end goal in mind, and direct your focus there. Look at all the touch points that a client has, or a future client. Where are they going to spend their money, and what are they going to judge your business? So they are going to look at socials, they're going to look at your website, they're going to look at your content. So make sure it's the best it can be. So that's where I focus on strategy, because quiet time is the best time to do it.
That's when you can think clear, and when it's quiet, I know I come up with the best ideas.
Yes.
It's so true.
Yeah,
it
your
really does.
Creative mind.
Well, creative mind. All right, so thank you guys. We hope you got some value out of what we're sharing today.
Yeah, I was going to say best of luck to everyone. May you dig deep and
get in touch with us if there's any questions that you want us to answer. We're happy to, if you DM us or even email us, we'll drop some links in our podcast underneath. So get in touch and we'll stay tuned for our next podcast. We'll be sharing some more hot topics.
Thanks for the chat, Yo.
Thank you for the chat.
And stay tuned for our next episode.
See you guys. Have a great day.
Bye.